In the opening scene of 2001: A Space Odyssey, the audience watches as a mysterious black monolith is discovered by a tribe of hominids. Influenced by the monolith, the tribe learns to wield bones as tools, then as weapons to drive out a rival tribe who took over their watering hole. Although the specific meaning of the monolith is open to interpretation, I see it as a marker of evolution. It didn't cause the hominids to learn how to use tools, rather it was the other way around. Through some alien intelligence or divine authority, the monolith arrives every time humanity is taking their next evolutionary leap. It was there when we learned to walk on land, when we discovered fire, when we invented the wheel, and in 1990 when we invented the internet. Humans have always relied on stories as a means of understanding the world around us. Fables told to us as children teach us the values our culture approves of, and as we grow older, our worldview is informed by political ideologies and the art we consume. The introduction of the internet precipitated an exponential advance in technology like nothing we had ever seen. As the technology around them began changing faster and faster, everyone began to look forward, and big ideologies, big stories, capitalism, communism, conservatism, couldn't function. Big picture ideas that don't pay off right away didn't mesh well with society's collective futurism. It's impossible to contextualize the world with a sprawling narrative if the world is changing too fast for that narrative to keep up. As media theorist Douglas Rushkoff puts it in his book Present Shock, we all became futurists in one way or another, peering around the corner for the next big thing and the next one after that. But then we actually got there. Here. Now. We arrived in the future. That's when the story really fell apart. The story he speaks about exists in both a literal and allegorical sense, and the falling apart lies in the story's relation to time. Literally, he is speaking of Joseph Campbell's model. Famously used to structure the first Star Wars film, in his book The Hero with a Thousand Faces, Campbell sums it up as, "A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man." What's really important about this story is that it is a linear model of storytelling. There's a beginning, middle, and end, and that is its backbone. This linear model reigns supreme until something big changed. Viewers gained the ability to interact with their media. The advent of television brought with it remote controls, which totally ripped the medium out of linearity. Before, if a commercial came on, the viewer was forced to watch or get up in order to change it, so the TV held all the power. Post-remote controls, however, the balance tipped in favor of the audience. A viewer could watch the first half of a film, then switch to the back end of a football game, then go to a TV show, then back to the last act of that film. Wrenching the medium out of coherent time caused the storytelling power of TV to wane. Episodic television shows, with a beginning, middle, and end, were replaced by a strange brand of TV where the show just existed, and these are what saturate the modern landscape. A show like Lost or Game of Thrones is a good contemporary example of this. They exist in perpetuity, becoming more and more convoluted, unsure of how to end. Or there are shows like Family Guy, a postmodern stew of meta jokes and self-referentiality, literally halting its plot to make a joke. There can't be a beginning, middle, and end because the viewer is in control and has to be able to jump in at any time. The change in our entertainment and how we engage with it, and the internet, just accelerated the flow of information being beamed into every person's home and wrenched everything out of time. By the late 90s, everything was discontinuous and disconnected and people simply couldn't contextualize the world anymore. They couldn't do it through the news, nor could they do it through art. So, as the end of the century and the millennium crept closer and closer, everyone, as I mentioned before, was looking forward. Something had to happen, right? It can't stay like this forever, can it? And they were right, something did happen. The cries of the people to contextualize was heard by the market, and as a response, social media was born. Friendster was founded in 2002, MySpace in 2003, and Facebook in 2004. All of these were slightly different in terms of their presentation, but served the same purpose. It allowed people to assemble their life into a narrative. Like the remote control, it shifted the power balance to the people. They were able to live a linear life that they could control on a phone or a computer. But these tools were born of the free market, and so they were engineered to take advantage, to addict their users. Consequently, at a certain point, the contextualizing coupled with the addiction and just warped into performing. Somewhere along the way, the idea of assembling a coherent narrative in order to take in the world properly turned into needing to cultivate an image of yourself in order to prove that you exist. But, as many people point out, humans have been performing for years, right? When you go to work, you're performing as a professional version of yourself, or when you're on a date, you'll try to be a cooler version. So what's the difference? Well, when you come home from a date or from work, you don't stay that person. You don't keep performing. You get off the stage. With social media, you're always on stage, or rather, it is always on you. There's literally a device strapped to your body at all times that alerts you when you get tagged, texted, or tweeted at. You can perform when you're alone because your audience is in your pocket. That's the really scary part. If you're performing even when there's no one else there, who is the real you? What does that do to your sense of being, your individuality? What does it mean when everyone is famous, even if it's just a little bit? Okay, look, at this point, I get that I sound pretentious and kind of judgy, so I want to step back and make it clear that I don't hate the internet. The internet is the most significant thing that humanity has ever created. It has allowed each and every one of us to gain access to everything. The entirety of humanity's knowledge on art, science, the whole world is there for the taking. And I don't hate social media either. However, certain platforms are clearly better than others. Let's compare two different apps, Letterboxd and Snapchat. Letterboxd is an app in which you log, rate, and review films. You can follow your friends or other critics and read or engage with their reviews. What's important about it, and what makes it one of my favorites, is that it's built on a mutual love of film. Most members of the app don't know each other on a personal level, and they don't have to, because the point of the app is not to exhibit each member's life, but to provide a space in which to learn about, dissect, and discuss film. Snapchat, on the other hand, is one of my least favorites. The app is built around the idea that all of your communication is temporary. Users can either talk peer-to-peer with their friends or post to a story that all of their mutuals can see. Everything on the story expires after 24 hours, and you can only see peer-to-peer messages for a predetermined amount of time, usually a couple of seconds. You're in contact with people, but you don't connect with them. While Letterboxd is all about community, Snapchat is the opposite. It operates on such a quick timescale with such an emphasis on real-time photo or video taking that you need to be performing constantly on it. I mean, I'm sure you've seen what it looks like when someone is using the app. From an outside perspective, you see someone scrolling on their phone, opening a message, processing it, and then, just for a second, popping up into an animated pose to snap back and then going back to normal. Neil Postman, in his book Amusing Ourselves to Death, described what's wrong with Snapchat about 30 years before it even existed. He said, "Americans no longer talk to each other, they entertain each other. They do not exchange ideas, they exchange images." By comparing Letterboxd and Snapchat, I'm not trying to say that everyone should abandon Snapchat and move to Letterboxd, but rather to make the point that social media works best when you're interacting with people who you have a common interest with. Because then, you don't have to perform to any of them, you can focus on whatever that interest is. Twitter's a pretty good place for this, although that character limit can be an issue, because it is designed perfectly for building communities. Instagram is somewhere in between something like Letterboxd and Snapchat. There are opportunities to foster a community, but there's a ton of peer-to-peer contact on it too. Facebook occupies a similar space as Instagram, and they have their own problems. And I'm not making this video in order to shame the people who use social media. I think it's ultimately a personal choice. Some people can handle it and some can't. I'm just one of those who can't, and when I was using Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, I felt alone. I felt like I was the only person who felt that way, who had to perform in order to be a part of the second life all my friends were living online. And I mean, yeah, I would post pictures with ironic captions or whatever, but irony is not enough with this. Calling bullshit and then continuing to be a part of what you're calling bullshit on is not enough, especially because everyone is being ironic and everyone's calling bullshit. That's not going to precipitate any real change, nor does it present a meaningful resolution to what people are feeling. I'm certain that there are a ton of other people who feel like me, and that's who this video is for. So, if you feel like you're in the same spot as me, I have a few things I've learned that help me figure out how to engage with the digital landscape. 1. Find your community. Like I mentioned, the way I have found I can engage with social media is by using an app like Letterboxd or Twitter and basing my bubble of friends off of common interests. There was no need for me to perform if I was talking about movies or comic books or even just sharing memes. 2. Make cool shit. The internet is most powerful as a tool to make whatever you want. If you want to write, write. If you want to make a movie, do that. The best way to contextualize the world around you is to understand it the best way you can, and that was through art and analysis for me. 3. Talk about these things. Social media is hard to critique in a meaningful way because the minute a book or article or video like this is published, it is outdated. Like I said, what precipitated all of this was the exponential advance of technology, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. The only way to keep up with it is to have a continued conversation about it. And that's tough because that conversation can only come from the youngest generation, because frankly, most adults don't really understand what social media is. It's not just hashtags and memes or whatever, it's bigger, stranger, and scarier than that. Ultimately, we are still Kubrick's hominids. The monolith is here, we've discovered something, and it's going to change the way we relate to each other forever. If we continue to be this obsessed with capturing every moment, they will leave us behind every time.